The biggest battle we will ever have to face is the battle between you and you. It's the battle of taking your mind to that limit and then breaking through. On the Mindful Experiment podcast, we will share concepts, universal laws, and interviewing individuals who have done just that, who have gone through the dark times and through those moments allowed their light to shine bright. I'm your host, Dr. Vic Manzo, and I want to thank you for listening to the podcast and taking this journey with me as we discover different avenues to break through those limits, expand your reality, and evolve into the person you desire to be. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This show is sponsored by Empower Your Reality. Empower Your Reality is an online consciousness school that is designed to help you elevate the mind, raise your consciousness, your vibration, to attract and create the reality of what it is that you desire. At Empower Your Reality, we have books, we have online classes. You can find the podcast here on there and other things that can help you elevate and truly learn the art and the science of creating the reality of what it is that you want to experience in your life. So for more information to check out all that we're up to and what we're doing, please visit www.empoweryourreality.com. Now, back to the show. Hey everyone, and welcome. This is Dr. Vic, and you're listening to another episode here on the Mindful Experiment, as I have each week someone that I interview that helps shift, looks at a mindset from a different perspective, a different context in life, and how to maximize the mindset to maximize the life of where you are. And this week, I had an outstanding guest by the name of Robbie Kramer. He is the men's dating and lifestyle expert. Now, if you ever seen the movie Hitch, this is him in the real world. It's kind of cool. I had a blast chatting with him. Just to give you a little background, Robbie has been guiding men to accomplish their goals with women, health, fitness, and career since 2008. He founded Inner Confidence to show men exactly how to create the lifestyle of their dreams in a way that actually works. There's no quick fixes, no magic pills, and no BS. Just tested, proven, easily implementable advice that works. Robbie brings dignity and ease to traditional taboo interactions. No funny names, no pickup routines, no fake stories tricking women into liking you. Just 100% real action. Robbie has worked personally with over 1,000 clients on 6 continents. Robbie also hosts the Leverage podcast, a popular podcast with over 10,000 downloads per episode, equaling 500,000 total downloads. We had a great interview. We talked a lot about men. We talked a lot about dating. We got into even relationships a little bit. So really great podcast to tune into for any gender. Don't have to be a man. It can also be a woman also. You can learn some of the things here, what men go through, and understand our thinking and thought processes and so much more. But without no further ado, here is Mr. Robbie Kramer. Well, Robbie, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. Can't wait to pick your brain. I'm probably going to wish I learned some of the things you're going to be sharing when I was younger. So it's going to be fun to dive in here. And I'm kind of curious though, how did you get into doing what you're doing now, or what kind of led you to have that passion or that inspiration to want to do what you're doing at this time?
Yeah, well, dating was something that I was a total idiot with. It's completely clueless around that time when you start to, I guess, date, which is that nebulous kind of after you graduate from college, when you're out in the workforce, through high school and college, you kind of, most guys just meet girls, through the classes or their social circle. But once I got that first 9-to-5 job that I hated in banking, I was like, all right, how do I meet girls? I was going out to the bars and, killing my liver and partying a bit. But I was too afraid to talk to girls. I'd get drunk and maybe at the end of the night, I'd think about doing it, but I had this terrible approach anxiety. And this was back in 2003. And online dating wasn't really a thing so much back then. It was just kind of getting started. But I just I had no idea like what to do on a date, like how to get a date. It was all just kind of this big mystery. And at the time, a buddy of mine told me about this book that came out. A lot of people read it. It's called The Game. And it was full of all this pickup artist stuff. And I was like, that's weird. I don't want to kind of, I don't need game, blah, blah. And I ended up reading it and getting kind of sucked into this weird sort of subculture. And obviously, a lot of that stuff was very inauthentic ways of operating. But the one good thing was it got me out of my comfort zone and taking action. And I had this pretty crippling fear of showing a woman that I was interested in her. Like, for whatever reason, growing up in Southern California, just culturally, I had this fear that if girls knew that I liked them, I'd be rejected, or they would think I was a creep, or all this kind of negative stigma around showing my interest. So I didn't really have a healthy way to do that. So the one good thing about the beginning of my journey was that, just going up and approaching women, getting rejected, kind of got me over that initial just fear of being authentic and showing my desire. And that's a huge thing that I find a lot of guys struggle with. Some people call it the nice guy syndrome. There's a great book by Dr. Robert Glover about that. But it's basically like what I would do to try to meet girls is do favors for them, bring extra copies of my homework in high school. And, that never led to anything, just more work on my half. So, a lot of that pickup stuff, though, was very contrived, felt really fake. So that led me into more mainstream personal growth, which was great. Because if it wasn't for the dating stuff, I never would have started asking my questions, around dissolving your ego or finding out kind of who you really are, or getting more authentic about who you're being in the world. And that led to eventually me opening up my business, which is called Inner Confidence, and helping other guys kind of walk the same path. I started a blog back in the day, and guys were just kind of hitting me up being like, wow, can you help me do this stuff? And I was like, sure. At the time, it wasn't a business. As I mentioned, I was working in banking in a job that I hated. So luckily 2008 came, crashed the market. I had to get out of that career anyways. So kind of naturally transitioning into becoming like a dating coach, which turned out to be my dream job, which I never expected to be in. And since then, that was in 2008, I've been leading trainings and workshops and online trainings and writing, blogging, so on and so forth about it. And I've had crazy experiences ranging from being on a boat with Playboy models in the Maldives and a whole bunch of crazy stuff, like as far as the single life goes. Now I have a girlfriend and a more normal relationship, but I've kind of run the gamut when it comes to dating, relationships, and crazy stuff you can do as a guy.
I love it. So are you Will Smith in the movie Hitch?
Yeah, basically. Like if people ask me what I do, a lot of the times they'll say, have you seen Hitch? And yeah, that's me. The white version.
I just had to ask. I was like, how do you frame that? I'm a consultant. What does it say in the movie? I'm a consultant, I think, or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's always a little bit of an awkward conversation.
Very, very interesting. I love that. And I laughed when you said The Game. I didn't read it. I had a friend of mine who was reading it, and he was like, oh man, did you read this book? And he keeps going through it and stuff. And I was just like, what do you need a book for? I was like, and he's like, and I'm the type of guy who's just, I had that anxiety, it was always that, how do I get over that first hump? That was my mindset. Like, if I can just get over the first hump, then I'm good. I can take care of, I can control the rest. I'll be good there. But it's just like that anxiety of, how do I approach? What do I say? How do I say what? What am I going to catch into the room? Or how can I try to get something, right? You get all, I don't know if you did that, but that was me. Totally in my head.
Yeah.
Right. And instead of just, then I learned as you get experienced and more veteran-like, it's a lot easier. And I'm like, it's funny how I had to go through all that. But yeah, anyway, I digress.
Totally. A lot of, when I kind of look back on my journey, a lot of my improvement was really just aging, becoming more mature. As a guy in your early 20s, especially, I had some buddies who were really good looking surfers, and they just cleaned up. My roommate. And it was so annoying going out with him all the time, because basically every time we go out in Pacific Beach, San Diego, he'd meet a bunch of girls, brings the girls home, and I'm sitting there like, what the hell? So I used to think it was all about looks by watching kind of him operate, and I think that's true when it comes to younger girls and younger guys. Looks are a little bit more of a factor, but when you get older, more mature, women start to look for, a guy's masculinity, his strength, his confidence. And as you develop into a guy who's, all around attractive to women, you start to have a lot more success. And that typically doesn't happen for a guy until, their late 20s, early 30s. And I've noticed a lot of guys, a lot of my friends either got married at a young age or they were in a really long-term relationship all throughout their 20s. And so a lot of guys who didn't date and maybe got divorced in their mid 30s, they kind of find themselves in a tough situation where they never went through a lot of those trials and tribulations. And getting back into it can be a bit of a struggle.
Totally. And I love how, for me at least, I know when I was in relationships was my greatest teacher. And I think you kind of said a little bit of that, correct? Where it's like for me, I know whenever I had a breakup, I would like spend 2, 3, 4 months analyzing, not maybe not 4 months, but a good couple months of where I'd be like, okay, what did I mess up at? How was it me? What did I have to learn from? Was that kind of somewhere because I know you brought that up a little bit. Was that similar to that?
For sure. Yeah, I agree. I think relationships are our greatest teacher, and going through those breakups, and I think you learn more about yourself, in a relationship, especially if you're living with someone. You get to kind of, that's the cool thing about relationships, is you get to kind of experience life as close as you can through another human being. And man, I've been through so many breakups. It's you really learn a lot, that's for sure.
You do. I can totally connect with you on that one. Now,
Are you single?
No, I'm married.
Okay.
I've been through the gambit though, so I know, and apologies to all the women I've ever dated. I went through a lot of learning experiences, but one of the things is like I always share a lot now is that you're talking about being in a relationship, just in a relationship or living with someone, right? My wife and I've been married for 5 years, and she is my greatest teacher out of anyone. I mean, I've read zillions of books. I'm always doing self-improvement, been doing it for over 15 years, and it's one of the things where though. She knows how to put me in check and make me really think of things. Not in check, but like keep my mind in check. Where if I'm being too ambitious, from I'm too in a high, she'll bring me back down. She does it automatically, with not even thinking. I don't know if you ever heard of Dr. John DeMartini, but his work is a lot on values, and he'll talk about how your partner is really designed to keep you balanced, and it drives you nuts because when you're happy and excited, you ever notice your partner's not? And then you try to explain that happiness, and then all of a sudden you're drained from that, or vice versa. When your energy is low and you're depressed, and when you share that vulnerability with them, all of a sudden it's like they'll say something. You're like, oh my god, that's so. I didn't even think. Oh, and the next thing you know, you're back to where you're balanced, if you want to put it for that matter.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've noticed myself a lot of the time when I'm with my partner, and she's overly excited, I'll find myself getting annoyed and wanting to like bring them down.
It's your job. Like an asshole. No, I know what you mean.
Right.
And I know what
Sorry,
you mean.
Babe, I'm just trying to bring you back to earth.
Yeah, now you can just tell her, hey, I'm just trying to. It's my job just to keep you here, right? This is where your zone is, on that level. What would you say is one of the biggest mistakes that you have seen, personally and professionally, with everything that you do, that men make?
I think guys get too hung up on not understanding, or not hung up. They just don't understand what women are attracted to a lot of the time. They think it's, looks, bank account, impressing them, taking them on elaborate dates. I think when the easiest mistake that guys could kind of instantly fix is how they go about a date, because, it's hard enough to get dates. If you're getting a lot of dates, you're probably succeeding. But most guys who are struggling, they're struggling to get dates in the first place. And then when they do get a date, because they don't have an abundance of dates, they're more likely to get nervous and screw that date up. And it's typically because they just don't have a plan, or they don't know what a good date looks like. Our culture just says go to dinner, go somewhere nice, And then maybe, I mean, the old cliche was go to dinner and a movie. Luckily now you can't do that thanks to COVID. But the whole idea of a dinner date just sucks. It's very forced. You're interacting with the waiter, the waitress, server. You have all these sort of interruptions happening. You're typically sitting across from someone. The conversation in the initial stages is always that small talk, getting to know each other, but it just feels a little bit too job interviewey, and it doesn't really allow for any fun, any physical communication. And guys usually just end up spending a decent amount of money on a nice dinner, and then when they follow up with the girl, she says, "Oh, sorry, I wasn't really feeling the chemistry," or she just ghosts them. And it's not because that guy did anything wrong. It's simply because just the way he ran the date was inferior. So my advice to guys is when you're doing it, when you've got a date, if it's someone you've met online, and you have there's different, every interaction is different, right? If you meet a girl online and you guys have this amazing connection and you really feel the vibe, then sure, go on a first date where you've got a bunch of different stops, different venues, and make a night out of it. But if it's someone you don't know really well and there's not a ton of background, I always recommend keeping the date super short. Grab a coffee or go for a walk in the park, and be okay with ending it around the 30-minute to an hour mark. Better to end on a high note and leave her wanting more than to let it get boring. Same thing if you were to approach a girl in a bar. It's always better to be the one to walk away first and leave on a high note, because you're going to know when you're about to run out of stuff to say. You're going to know when that anxiety level comes up and you start to go in your head. And if you just say, "Hey, I'm going to grab a drink, run to the bathroom," and you leave first, then you never worry about, her getting bored and her having to essentially tell you to, buzz off. So that's my advice, is keep the first date short. If it's an online sort of thing, if it's someone you met and you've already have a pretty good chemistry, then my suggestion is go, meet. Well, now that it's tough because everything's closed, but this is a great tip. How to run a date during a pandemic is, if you've already been on that first 30-minute date or you have a pretty good background, then she'll probably feel comfortable at least meeting you at your place. She might not have to come in, but have her meet you at your place, give her a quick tour, maybe pour a glass of wine. After the tour, say, "We're going on an adventure," leave the house, go to the grocery store, shop for food, come back, cook the food together, pour some more wine, make some cocktails, whatever, then move to the couch. So really what you're doing is you're simulating a date where you're moving to all these different venues, which is a great way to get to know someone better. It keeps the date interactive. You keep moving around. And but you're doing it amidst the fact that everything's closed. This is if your city's in total lockdown, because grocery stores will be open, but that's about it. If that's not the case, then I suggest kind of bar hopping on a first date, or starting in a park, walking around a park, going from there to a bar. If they don't drink, go to a coffee shop, grab ice cream. But the whole idea is lots of little stops, lots of moving, which creates a much more engaging environment. So, yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I know there wasn't too many coffee shops. Well, there was coffee shops back in the day when I was dating, but now there's like a plethora of them all over the place. But I like that idea of keeping it short, especially in the beginning, because it's one of those things. What if you have an awkward moment, right? You want to, let's say you're doing it and you're getting to know the person, you're like, "Yeah, no, this is not the person I want to be around right now."
Right.
Short. It's not like a 2-3 hour thing, and you're out a ton of money if you go on a nice dinner. So it's just an easy coffee break. So I kind of like that a lot, actually. When it comes to, some of the things, I know you said leave things on a high note too, right? It's one of those things where, is there a certain way of knowing? So let's say guys bars are opening up here. I'm in the Chicagoland area. They're starting to get back and open up again. But let's just say, how does a guy know when it's time to be like, "All right, because this is where I need to, kind of end this now," or in a good way, just be end on that high note? How do they know besides just running out of stuff?
Right. Well, for me, one of the biggest challenges was being able to read women's subtle signals to tell if they were interested in me or not. Because in the beginning, I was just totally clueless. I'd walk up to a girl and, I could tell if she was giving me that resting bitch face, or, if she's telling me to get the hell away from her. That was obvious. But if she was just talking to me, I really didn't have a clue. Whereas now there's a lot of nuances that are pretty easy to pick up on. But if if you're not as good at reading those signals, a great way to kind of figure that out in the beginning of a conversation is she asking you anything, right? Because a lot of guys go into what I call like interview mode or Walter Cronkite mode, where they just start firing questions like, where are you from? What do you do? Where'd you grow up? And she's fielding the questions, and this guy just keeps answering the question. And eventually that will probably become annoying for her because she's not investing in the conversation. There's no investment on her part in the interaction, which shows that she might not be interested. So you've got to give, the woman the chance to invest in you, which, is you have to take a risk and be willing to shut up for a second, look her in the eye and see if she continues the conversation. If she doesn't, and there's that, slightly too long awkward pause, that's a good chance to be like, hey, I'm going to, catch up with my friends. I'll talk to you in a bit. And at least then you're the one who left early. And you can always come back if it's at a bar and talk to her later, because she'll remember you as the guy who was cool and social and didn't stay too long and annoy her, which is typically what most guys do in a bar situation. And you're always, like I said earlier, you're going to know before if you're starting to get nervous, you're kind of running out of things to say. And if she's investing in the conversation, it'll really flow. It'll feel natural. And if she's not, it's going to feel forced. So my best advice for that is to, come over, say something, and be willing to sit with a little bit of silence and give her the chance to then engage you.
Good old awkward pause. Yep, I hear you on that one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's key. That's real critical. And I always, I've learned too in my upbringing where it was just like, if they're asking questions, then they're definitely interested. They have a curiosity in them in some way, shape, or form. And if they're not asking any questions, that was usually like a red flag for me. And if I kept asking, there came a point where I'm like, all right, cool. I love how you said it. Hey, I'll come back and we'll catch up in a bit here. I'm gonna go meet up with my friends.
Right.
And you keep it easy keel and you just move on from there.
Yeah. One of the things that I encourage my students to do is to approach girls during the day, which can be very nerve-wracking for most guys. At least for me, when I first did that, I was like, who does this? This is weird. This is awkward. I'm talking about like walking down the sidewalk or in a grocery store or, picking up the laundry, dry cleaning, wherever you are. And the good thing about that is women aren't expecting it. So if you can do it in a way that makes them feel relatively comfortable, you're going to really stand out compared to the guys that she's talking to online or the guys that, wait until the end of the night when they're 10 drinks deep to hit on her at a bar or a club. And if you do that well, she's really I think that's the best way to get dates. And it's also a great way to push your comfort zone, become more confident, and just grow as a man, because there's nothing better for growth than facing your fears. So my advice to do that, I think I got this from Ferris way back in the day, which is just such a natural way to do it. Is you can just walk up to a woman pretty much in any situation and say, hey, I saw you. I had to risk embarrassing myself to come over here and meet you. I'm actually late for a meeting, but give me your number. If you don't like me, give me a fake one. And that's the whole elevator pitch right there, right?
Quick, simple, and easy. I like that.
Yeah. In the first few times, when I read that, I was like, wow, that's, I can give this a try. And it worked. I certainly got a ton of rejections, and then I learned how to actually have a prolonged conversation if she was interested instead of just running away. But I think if you're a guy who's struggling to get dates, or you're not getting dates with the quality of women that you want, typically because it's really tough online, women have a huge advantage when it comes to online dating versus men in terms of the quality of the first dates, I think. So I would suggest getting comfortable with that as a strategy, because it even works during a pandemic.
That's my next question is how can guys get dates, like especially during the pandemic and so forth? What are ways that they can? I mean, I love your creativity of we'll come over, have a glass of wine, or then go grocery shopping, make dinner, have another glass of wine, chill, that kind of thing. I love that idea. But how can guys, let's say here's a guy who's wanting to find a woman, do those types of things, and I mean, online's another avenue too, but how can they do that and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, during the pandemic, obviously if everything's closed, your only options are kind of online or, hopefully meeting someone through your social circle. But if you don't have much of a social circle, a lot of the guys I work with are tech guys, programmers, and they tend to spend a lot of time on their computer working, and they don't have a huge social circle. My advice is always to focus on building that, but that's a long-term sort of strategy, right? And short run is to meet women whenever you see them, just out and about, and get consistent at taking that action, because the approach anxiety, the fear, will lead to most guys avoiding those opportunities. If you do what I call the girl of the day challenge, which is approach the most beautiful girl you see no matter what every day, that can lead to approaching multiple women. I've never seen anyone who could do it more than 30 days. It's a tough one thing to do. But and if you're going to use online dating's tough. I would really only recommend it for guys who are pretty good looking. I don't think I'm good looking enough to do really well online. I guess I'd give myself like a 6.5, but like, it's so looks based. It's, women are they're swiping so fast. It's really difficult, due to the algorithms. Also, you're likely depending on your age, to get weeded out. So if you're older, it can be a little bit of a struggle. I just find online dating to really not be worth the time. And that's why I'm such a big fan of building the confidence to approach women kind of anytime, anywhere. And then, as I mentioned, long run is to develop a social circle. And I think the mistake that guys will make when they're developing a social circle is, to have a good social circle, you have to be friends with women. And if you try to hook up with every woman that you meet, you're probably not going to have a lot of friends. So if you're not feeling that vibe right off the bat, and women are usually pretty good at showing their interest. Like if they like you, that women, especially kind of nowadays, they're way more comfortable being the hunters. The roles have kind of reversed a bit with with how feminism's been adopted. And it's really interesting because I live in Eastern Europe now, and seeing the difference between how women pursue men in America versus the fact that they basically don't in Eastern Europe just shows that huge difference in culture. So if a woman likes you in the US, a lot of the time your best strategy is to kind of play the role as like the hot chick and don't pursue her at all. Because she's so used to so many dudes like totally on her jock, that if you just kind of lay back and show that you're social and maybe invite her to cool things where there's other friends of yours too, but never really like flirt with her, but don't aggressively hit on her, she'll start to think, oh, this guy's, he's hot. Why hasn't he made the move? Why does he like me? What's going on? And, it's a little bit of it's a fun kind of role reversal. And American girls love to like pursue guys. So that's something I learned after a lot of travel, is that you can be a lot more aggressive in, South America, Eastern Europe. So for me, when I was, trying to kill that sort of nice guy syndrome I had, traveling to other places where I was outside my comfort zone, where I wasn't worried about looking like an idiot, to local people and worried about my reputation, I was able to really grow. And now, especially during, the pandemic, we have the opportunity. Everyone's working from home for the most part. There's a lot of companies will let you kind of work from anywhere. And if you do move somewhere like South America or Eastern Europe, you're going to save a lot of money. You're spending a lot less because the cost of living is a lot cheaper. There's a ton of people kind of migrating out of the big cities like, New York, Miami, because why are they going to pay that high rent? So and I found that for guys who are struggling in the US, American guys, if you go abroad, it's going to be a lot easier. So that can be a great way to not just grow and improve your confidence, but save a bit of money in the process. So that's something I work with a lot of clients of mine to help them do that as well.
And I like how you said the online thing, because to me, when online dating kicked in, and then I tried it back in the day, wasn't successful. But one of the things is I didn't like it because it was a cookie cutter thing. And it was just like, here's what you like, right? It's a shopping list. And sometimes I think there's a miss of magic there where sometimes you may, if you look at the whole list of somebody and when you meet someone in person or however it may be, you get to see the energy of the person and so much more behind it where there's more substance. Where there, it's just like, you're living it's a mental game, right? Oh, this person looks really attractive. Oh, wow, look what they like here. And you build this program in your head thinking they're someone, but then at the end of the day, what's the chances of them actually being what you constructed in your mind, which is slim to none from my experiences. Yeah. But in that perspective. So I think but how can a guy, is it no hope for a guy when it comes to online dating altogether? Or is there ways they can use tips and tricks to, what's up your bag, your bag tricks to be able to help them be able to get noticed if there is any, or is it just one of those things like, as I'm sharing, just it's a checklist thing and that's it?
No, well, what you said is totally spot on. Is that's kind of that's I think why online dating is so popular, but it's also so difficult and such a time waste. And I think this happens. I mean, it happens both ways. Guys, you see a girl's profile. We tend to fall in love at first sight a lot more than women do. I think we're a little bit more, like looks driven at the beginning. So we'll start to look at her pictures, look at her Instagram, we'll kind of create this fantasy of this perfect girl in our head. And then when we meet them, that will create us being more nervous, less authentic, less open, more of like a shell of ourself, which will lead to not the best impression. And she's doing the same thing. She's got this amazing fantasy about you in her head. And then when you show up and the date, it's always an expectation. Like the expectations are always way higher, and reality sets in, and it's typically not as good. Obviously, some days go great, and there are a ton of exceptions. And yeah, online dating, there's definitely a way to succeed. The way to succeed is you have to. There's a huge what I call signal to noise ratio online. If you're a beautiful woman, you're just getting bombarded with attention, messages. So the only way to get noticed or to get your message even open is to stand out. And the only way to do that is to go against the grain. You can't do the, hey, what's up? Hey, how's it going? Any of those messages, forget it. They're not opening that shit, right? You have to really, come up with, I've got, if you go to my site, I actually have like a guide, a Tinder guide, and it has some kind of stock opening lines to hopefully get noticed. One of them that I like the best is so does this mean we're exclusive? Which works on Tinder, because basically you both swiped right? So the follow, does this mean we're exclusive? And then she'll say yeah or no, and then there's a whole follow up to that where you're creating this like marriage role play, where it's like, yeah, she'll say, yeah, we're totally exclusive. Awesome. I got 37 likes on Facebook when I changed my relationship status to in a relationship. My mom's super excited to meet you. And then, you're going back and forth. Where are we going to have the wedding? I got you this ring. You sent an emoji ring. I went to Jared's, right? There's just, basically it's a template. And my advice to guys is find a template that works and just stick with the template, because otherwise you're just wasting a ton of time. And you're going to get some girls who have seen it before. Like, oh, I've heard that line or this or that. But any response is a good response. That's what you have to remember. If you use a canned line and she responds, that's great, because at least now you're in a conversation. Whereas the, hey, what's up? Hey, how's it going? You're just going to get completely ignored and waste a ton of time. And the other thing is, if you try to get creative and, read every profile and try to send a creative message, you're just forget it. Like the investment there is, the time return is just not there. So if you're going to do it, my advice, use the template. There's one on my site I mentioned. There's other things you can find out there too. And don't be surprised when girls call you out for using lines and using stuff, but it's online dating. That's the nature of the beast.
I like that. And yeah, any attention is or any response is a good response, right? Because you're getting that attention, and that's what you triggered something in them or interest them in some way, to where they respond back, and it's like, okay, I'm there now, right. Taking it forth from that. No, I think those are useful tips, and especially in today's society with everything going on and all that, can definitely be a game changer for men in many ways, or just in dating in general. What are things you now? Is it mostly single men that you work with, or do you also work with relationship guys and men in relationships also?
Most of the time, it's single guys. Occasionally, I'll have a guy come to me who's in a relationship that wants to, maybe spice up the relationship, open the relationship. I have a lot of experience with, non-monogamy and a lot of the crazy sort of different lifestyles you can pursue. Um, but yeah, mostly single guys, I would say.
What's another? So we shared one big mistake that guys make. What's another common thing that you see men make when it comes to approaching a girl, dating? The work that you do, or even a personal that can help give guys some clues of how they not prevent from making that mistake, or how to counter that.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing um, is guys tend to overinvest when they really like a girl too early, too soon, and scare that girl away. And I like to say that when it comes to dating and relationships, men kind of hold the commitment card and women hold the sex card. So women are really in control of when they're feel comfortable to sleep with you, whereas men are kind of the ones in control of when they're going to commit in a relationship. And a lot of women will attempt to negotiate by, keeping that sex card until you keep the commitment card. And that can be okay. That's there's nothing wrong with that. That's a woman who wants a relationship with you, and if that's what she needs to have that, and that fits your values, and by all means. I used to kind of look down upon that and say, no, guys, like you shouldn't negotiate these cards. But that, now I'm in the situation with my current girlfriend where I'm actually in a monogamous relationship, and for the first time in like 10 years, and totally enjoying it. And But what a lot of guys will do is, because especially now, modern day, people are more apt to hook up early. Whereas before, I think in general, it took a little bit longer. Now, like, especially on Tinder, online dating, they're basically fuck apps, a lot of these apps. And you're gonna have the best chance by kind of presenting yourself as more of like a sexual object, versus the guy she's gonna take home to mom. But the mistake I see a lot of guys make is, after they've maybe slept with the girl or things are progressing, they quickly push for a relationship. And if the girl's already slept with you and she's not pushing for a relationship, like, don't push it, because typically, you're the man that should be, if she wants a relationship, she will seek that out. Women have absolutely no problems doing that. But if you do it as the guy and you're pushy about it, it kind of shows. And she's the type of girl who wants to take things a little bit slower. It shows a little bit of neediness and insecurity. So I recommend for guys that, just be wary of her investment level. And if it feels like you're always the one asking her out, if it feels like you're the one always pushing for sex, and you have that kind of scenario where, she doesn't want it as much as you, if there's an investment gap, if you're texting her 10 times and she gets, she messages you back once, like, it's baffling to me how guys are about this when it comes to the investment gap. Because when we like a girl, our emotions get the best of us. We're kind of like a freight train, just pursuing, and that's going to create the woman to just retreat, and those relationships will blow up. She'll ghost you, she'll stop wanting to be intimate with you, she'll dump you, whatever, or she just won't show up on a date. So, and those are the most painful situations for guys, because you start investing in a girl, you start to fall in love, and then you push too hard, and then she's gone from your life. That's a breakup. It takes time to get over that. So my suggestion is to have as many options as you can. If you're single, have fun, enjoy. depending on your sexual activity level, like, get out there and have a good time, because I don't know any guys that will look back and say, oh, I wish I had less fun when I was single. And typically, in my experience, when I was kind of at the top of my game, for lack of a better word, having the most fun, that's when I was able to find the best girls for a relationship. And those were always girls who I thought were, insanely attractive, pursuing me and saying, like, let's be in a relationship. And I think that's the better way for it to happen, the more natural way, based on feminine, masculine polarity and dynamics.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there. It's one of those things where, overcommitting, jumping in, that type of thing. I like how you said the commitment card, and then also they hold the sex card. You get into, relationship, you get in relationships, marriage. I've always heard in marriage from a lot of mentors will always talk about men like to control it from a financial standpoint, while the woman's going to control it from the sexual standpoint. And so when a woman does that, then the men are like, you can't spend that. You can't do that now. I'm going to limit you here or there, because then it becomes this control thing. And the wife's like, okay, fine. You want to play this game? Then you're going to have to enjoy yourself for a little bit, until you finally come to your senses that you remember here. This is I like how you call it an investment gap type of thing, but it's one of those things where, we've all been there. Oh, go ahead.
Totally. I mean, a great quote I heard is, you can't negotiate desire. And a lot of guys will try to negotiate desire from a woman by, like you said, withholding gifts or withholding the credit card or not letting her spend, and be like, all right, well, if I get her this bag, then of course she'll want to sleep with me. It's like, no, she won't. She'll want to sleep with you if she's attracted to you and you're confident and masculine. She won't want to sleep with you if you buy her a bag. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Super important.
And I think you brought up a great point too. Like, guys, go out and have fun, right? Be young, enjoy yourself, enjoy your youth, but learn. That's something I always used to say. Like, learn through the process, so that way, for me at least, when you have a good girl in front of you, and I'm saying one's bad, all of them, everyone's good in their own way. I just mean good in my shopping list. If I like to call it like a shopping list. But when I'm like, oh, this is someone who I can, be in a long-term relationship. This is someone who I can, I can see myself potentially maybe having a life with. That's where the experiences I went through, a lot of fun, but at the same token, I was able to see that a lot easier. Still had to learn through things, because sometimes you get into that mess. You're talking, I love how you brought it up too. It's like, I can see this, right? Overcommitting, going a little too far, slow down, take it easy, slow it, take one step at a time. And then all of a sudden I'm like, yep, got too far into this one. Man, I messed this one. How did I not see this? Or something comes up, and then I'm like, man, I should have just took another step back here, in that process and so forth. And
I mean, I think the most important thing when it comes to a relationship is you need time. You're always, when you're interacting with someone in the beginning stages, you're interacting with their kind of their best their best self, right? And it takes time to really get to know someone. Like I like to say, it takes at least 2 years to really get to know someone. So I see a big mistake. Obviously it can work out, but a lot of the times from the divorce guys I've worked with, they're like, everything was awesome. I, put a ring on it after 3 months or 6 months or even a year. And then she changed. And a lot of the time it's because he also changed, and there's all sorts of problems. But my advice is always just take it slow. It's very hard to go backwards. If you go backwards, basically you break up. So just go forward a little bit slower, and I think it'll work out better.
I had a guy tell me before when I was starting to date my wife, he kept saying, play it safe. No, slow down and play it safe. Right. And he was always like, just slow it down. Always go back to slowing it down. When things get turbulent, slow it down. You're speeding up, just slow down and just take your time with it. And that was on every aspect. And I thought that was very powerful, because even like nowadays, you were saying hookups happen like this, right? And before, back in the day, you had to earn your way to get to that point, right? You had to get the woman emotionally attracted to you. You had to get that trust to build and all those other things. And it was like a little bit more work involved, where now I'm not into the field, haven't been in the field for almost 10 years. So, but just hearing from you, it's more like, it's just kind of quicker. And I think that's
one thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, you made me remember something super important that I forgot to mention, which is, I think the reason why that's happening is due to Instagram. And essentially what Instagram is, it's like a third-party validation of someone, right? It's like your online magazine. So if you're on Tinder and you have a cool Instagram that, is appealing to women, if they see your Instagram and they're going to quickly be like, oh, okay, this guy's obviously normal. I feel comfortable going straight over to his house and hooking up. Versus before, you really had no way of knowing, right? And but that, as you mentioned, leads to you hook up the first night, come back 3 days later, you hook up again, you hook up the weekend, and then all of a sudden you're in a relationship. And you're like, what the hell happened? And then you're fighting about cheating and this and that and the other. You're like, what is that? We were just hooking up. Like, oh, it's only been a week. So yeah. So if you're single and your Instagram is not presentable, that is the number one thing you should work on, because, that's how we kind of validate these people these days. There's no way around it.
No, it's true. I think social media has played a huge role in that. And you get to, you can, again, it again comes from, I think you got to be careful with the whole construct you create in your brain, right? Because you can do this where you're seeing a person, like fake, we call it fake. I like to call it fake book instead of Facebook, because you're presenting a reality that's not really true. You see everyone always smile, even on Instagram, all their glorious times of what they're seeing. And then you get into that mindset of, like, again, the construct. Wow, this is a happy person. This person's always vibrant. Wow, they're smiling. Look at everything. Look at all your mind, left brain is analyzing and going, wow, yeah, look, smile, 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 happy, happy. Wow, look how fun they look, this and that. So then it engages this whole entire persona built into your mind. And then if you go right into the physical, I think, and I'm not an expert in this by any means, but it gets to the point then where you miss out on I think the critical foundational stages of building up that relationship before you get there. Because I think sometimes then you make it all physical, and then you don't know how to really do the emotional side that well. And then I think, I know you can overcome it, but it's just one of those things where I just think it makes it a little more difficult. But what do you think on that before, we wrap up?
No, I think you're totally spot on. It's really interesting with social media. And as you said on Instagram, it's total, you're not interacting with that person when you see their Instagram. They can be totally different. Most people look worse because there's so much photoshopping going on. Some people look way better though, because energetically, they're going to come across a lot differently in person. So, it just kind of goes back to what we said before. Slow down. Don't fall in love at first sight, because of social media, you're looking at doctored pictures a lot of the time, or you're looking at different angles, right? I think that's, as a guy, those are kind of our tendencies, is to just move too fast. If something tastes good, we just want to keep eating it. At least that's how I am, right? And overindulge, and then realize, oh, shit, now I need to step back. And then now you've got some problems. And as you said, you're not allowing things to develop emotionally, non-physically, if you jump into sex so fast. So yeah, that's a whole other can of worms, but I totally agree.
Love it. Well, brother Robbie, how can people connect with you, get the whole, learn what you're up to, follow up all the stuff that you're doing? How do they reach you and find you?
Sure. So if you're interested in any of the teachings and stuff that I talked about, like how to run a date and some of those strategies, I've got a bunch of free stuff on my website. It's innerconfidence.com. I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere for that. And if you want to get in touch with me or just kind of see what I'm up to, I'd suggest Instagram. And it's just Robbie_Kramer. And I've got a link on there. I do a lot of TikToking these days. I'm having fun with that, posting some videos. If that's something you haven't dabbled in, Vic, I recommend it. It's a cool new platform. So
I hear a lot about. Are you twerking on TikTok? Because that was.
Yeah.
I had to ask. It prevented me from going on for a bit, because I had some patients telling me, because I do a lot of videos, and they're like, you need to go on there. Oh my God. So I went on for a second. I'm like, all I'm seeing is people dancing. I'm like, this is not my platform, but I heard it's changing now. So
I think it is a bit, for whatever reason, just from making consistent little TikTok videos, I've gained a ton of followers, on there. Had a couple of videos go sort of viral. Whereas I feel like with Instagram or some of these other platforms, like, it's so advertising and money based that they've kind of throttled back the real engagement. So.
True.
see how long it lasts anyways.
Totally true. For all the listeners, I'll have all that information how to connect with Robbie in the show notes. Robbie, this was fun. I had some fun here. Learned some cool tips and tricks. Even though I am out of the game, very happily to be out of the game. But it's one of those things where it's kind of cool to be able to just share for the men out there who are single, especially during a pandemic, how to do things. And then when the pandemic, as looks like we're riding out a little bit, how to get back into the game with things and so forth. So thanks for taking the time and sharing space with us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Rick. It's been great to chat with you and really enjoyed the conversation.
Love it, brother. Thank you for listening to the podcast. For past shows, please visit www.empoweryourreality.com. I hope this show inspired you and added to your life to help you on the journey to rediscover who you really are. To connect with us on Facebook, please visit www.facebook.com/Dr. Vic Manzo. Check us out on Twitter. The handle is Dr. Vic21. Follow us on Instagram, www.instagram.com/Dr. Vic Manzo. If you were inspired by the podcast, pay it forward by sharing it with someone who you know can benefit from it. Thank you again for listening to the Mindful Experiment podcast, sharing paths to help you rediscover your infinite potential.